guys, and welcome back to Above the Tree Line. Today we have a special episode lined up for you. I'm actually not going to be the interviewer today. I will be the interviewee. And my good buddy here, Jack, who is our director of operations, Jack Bailey. I've loved having you on the show. You've talked about your story of healing and just you're really great personality, and you're also very inquisitive. I feel like we have very similar energies.
Right.
So this topic is one that I feel like I am personally an expert in because I've walked through it, and I wanted to have a friend ask me questions about it.
Well, I'm so excited to be a part of this.
Yes.
So thank you for allowing me to be just the interviewer.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure it's a little bit different being on that side of the table.
It's a little more
though it's the
intimidating.
Same side of the table.
Yeah.
It's just different, I guess.
I don't really like to be the one answering the questions, but the reason I felt like this was necessary was because we've done a lot of episodes about mental health before, and I've talked pretty openly that I've been diagnosed with a fairly serious mental health disorder, which is obsessive compulsive disorder. And it's not the way people say like, oh, I'm so OCD about, my desk being straight. I'm talking like the actual disorder.
Right.
And I was on the prayer team within the last couple of weeks, and a parent came up to me and they were distraught because their child had been diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder, and they were so confused. And when I was walking through this diagnosis, I couldn't find podcasts about it. I couldn't find enough information about it because only like 2 to 3% of people are actually diagnosed.
Wow, that's crazy.
So that's why I wanted to bring this subject into the light, because it is a genetic disorder.
Sure.
So I think as the generations go on, you'll see more and more people start to display characteristics of this.
So let's start this way. So tell me, how did you kind of come to the place where you understood or knew that you had something?
So mine started my freshman year in high school, where OCD is always, there's the obsession part and there's the compulsion part. I didn't know this at the time, but I had a boyfriend at the time that was like my first boyfriend. I liked him a lot. And throughout the whole time we were dating, I had this one little like L'Oreal eyeshadow thing that I like put on every day. And one day it ran out. It was like empty. And I was like, there's something that clicked in my head that was like, if I change eyeshadows, like this guy might break up with me, not because of the way I looked, but because my pattern was breaking.
Wow.
I was used to putting this on every single day. So when I went and bought the exact same one, I still, this sounds so crazy. I would still go and pretend like I was putting on the empty one and then put on the one that actually had it in there, because I was like, if I break my pattern, this guy is not going to be my boyfriend anymore. And so what you see is there's always a fear, there's an obsession, and then there's a compulsion that you do, and it's irrational because obviously those two things have nothing to do with each other.
Yeah. So you've got this obsession. When did it come to a breaking point for you at some point where you were like, okay, I can't handle this anymore? Mm-hmm. And how did that play out?
This was the part that was really confusing to my family and to my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband. About the time when I was 21 years old, hit and run OCD is it's a type of OCD where you're terrified that when you're operating a motor vehicle, you have accidentally harmed somebody without knowing it. So I got to this place where anytime I would drive to work, I would drive back over my tracks one more time just to make sure that I didn't hit a small child or cause an accident. And then I would drive back to my destination again. So it made me late for a lot of things. But then once I arrived at my destination, I would check the Austin Police Department crash page, and I would look at the route, and I'm like, were there any crashes along my route that maybe I have caused that I need to confess to? And so my obsession was like, I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want to go to jail. I don't want to be a hit and run person. So the compulsion was, let's just drive back and forth and just check. And then once you arrive at your destination, check the police reports.
Wow.
I know it doesn't.
That is, it's got to be exhausting for you.
It is exhausting because you live in fear.
That's dealing with that kind of obsession, really, because you really are. there's no end to that, that aspect of that.
It's called checking. Like that's the common behavior.
Okay.
So like I did realize, like my brother, when I was little, he used to go through and check all the light switches in the house because the fear was that the house would burn down. So he would check all the light switches a certain number of times. So there's what you see when if you start to notice these kind of behaviors in children, it's like, okay, what's the obsession that's driving the compulsion? Because for me, I ended up like not being able to drive to work anymore. Wow. I had to get my husband to take me to and from work. I was really scared. I got really sick, lost a ton of weight, and it was just crippling.
Wow. When were you diagnosed? Like
when I was
medically?
21.
When you were 21?
Yeah. I got the diagnosis from a doctor, and I was devastated because I was like, I didn't know that what I had was obsessive compulsive disorder. And she was like, yeah, you need to be on medications. SSRIs are the class of medications typically used to treat OCD. And I was heartbroken. And I was like, I don't want to be like, does this mean I am crazy? I don't want to be on medication.
Right.
And so I was diagnosed then. And then I went off the medication at some point after I was married, and everything started to come back again. And so I moved to a different area, started seeing a different doctor, and that doctor also was like, you have obsessive compulsive disorder. So it just kind of confirmed, because it wasn't like that. I'm not like constantly washing my hands. I'm not terrified of germs. It looked totally different.
Did that help you, or did it cause it to manifest even more?
So there's triggers. Like there's whenever your environment around you gets either like unpredictable, like COVID was a trigger for me. Like COVID, I just hit a really low point, and my fear at that point in time was, oh my gosh, have I taught my children enough about Christ? What if my children don't know anything about Jesus and it's my fault? And like, so there's a fear. And then I like obsessively went to Mardell bookstore, bought all these books, and I'm like, okay, kids, we're going to read the Bible every single night, because I didn't want my fear to come true.
Yeah. Yeah. So in that vein, I know sometimes we as Christians can be almost the hardest on our own. And as a Christ follower, how did that play into it? Did you question your faith? Did people come to you and say, "Oh, you're not"? That's just something in your head. How do you play that out as a Christ follower?
It's funny because we were having our ACF teaching team meeting, I guess last month, and we were trying to identify lies that we feel like the enemy tells us. And after I preach on a Sunday morning, one of the lies that I hear constantly is, "You're really good at pretending to be a Christian." And that's heartbreaking, because I'm like, then I have to check myself. I'm like, am I pretending? Do I really believe this? Yeah. But when you dig into it, people who are diagnosed with OCD tend to be very religious. Wow. There's a correlation I was reading here before we started, where OCD and religion are often intertwined, because there's obsessive fears about sin, fears of imperfection, fears of divine punishment, which lead to compulsive religious acts. Yeah. So then I started wondering, am I on staff at church as a compulsion for this fear that I have of sin? I mean, it just spins out of control. Yeah, absolutely. You can go down a lot of holes. Absolutely. There.
The rabbit trap is endless. It can be.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely.
So you have this compulsion, and you have this fear. How do you combat that with faith? And how can that, or does that help you? Yeah,
it's, in everybody's experience is different. When it first started showing up in me, I had a lot of people telling me, you just need to pray about it. You just need to pray about it. Have the faith to overcome it. And I do believe in miraculous healings. I believe I've seen God heal cancer. We've saw God heal you as a child. Like, I do believe that God can do those things, but I also feel like he can heal through medicine. Yeah. He can heal through treatment, and praying through it. As much as I prayed, I wasn't healed yet, and that may still be coming. But I found significant relief through medication, through therapy, and I still pray about it, but I do feel like, when Paul in the Bible talks about having that thorn in his side, and God doesn't remove the thorn from his side. He says, my grace is sufficient for you. I feel like many years ago when I prayed for God to remove this OCD diagnosis from me, I felt like he was saying, my grace is sufficient from you. Wow. Because at the same time, this thorn in my side, also people with OCD tend to be really compassionate, really great friends, really great listeners, like very attentive. We tend to make really great friends. And so I'm like, yes, the Genesis 3 world that we live in, like I have this diagnosis that wasn't part of the way God planned for me to be, but how has he been able to use it? Like what the enemy intended for evil, God turned for good. Yeah. And so I'm okay with having this and thinking that I'll be medicated forever. But I do believe that in a moment, God may be like, okay, this is gone.
That's great. Now, what kind of, for families or individuals that maybe haven't been diagnosed or they have been and they feel isolated, do you have a support system, and what does that look like for you, and maybe some encouragement for someone out there that may be in your situation and don't have anybody?
It's kind of one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this. I don't feel like there's a great support system for OCD. I feel like, most of the mental health disorders that get talked about are, you have like depression, anxiety, bipolar. And because OCD is such a misunderstood disease and so few people are actually diagnosed with it, I don't feel like there's a lot of resources out there. But, I will say there are like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT is a great way to deal with it. Like facing your fears and kind of reprogramming the way that you think. I will say what I did read, that my husband's very good at this, and this frustrated me for a long time, was whenever a person with OCD is having these obsessions, one of their checking behaviors will be to go to another person and be like, I didn't do this, right? I didn't actually hit a small child on my way to work, right? And that person needs to disengage because they are not there to like get you out of your obsession. You have to get yourself out of that. Wow. So it used to really make me angry because Matt would be like, not talking about it, and I get mad, but at the same time I was like, I have to be able to get myself out of this.
It takes really a strong person, friend, husband in your case, that will have the tough love to not dive into the obsession with you, but really to say, you know what, I'm not going to deal with that, and
because they just become another checking pattern.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, and literally I feel like
crazy.
it is crazy.
Maybe a bad terminology.
I know, but I just,
really
so many people, will talk about like, oh, like I said earlier, like I'm OCD about my desk being straight. I'm so OCD about cleaning. And I get that that's like a terminology, but I don't want people to think just because they have those tendencies that they are actually OCD. Like it takes a medical professional to diagnose this. And usually it's the obsession is so heavy that this irrational compulsion has to come in just to take care of the obsession. And it does, it sounds crazy. You would know if you got in a car accident. You would know. Right. It's irrational to think that I wouldn't have known that. And so it's just understanding the disease in general. But I feel like it's something we need to talk about.
I think that's the difficulty is the understanding part of it. I think so many people have their idea of what it is, a misconception of what it is, and then the reality of what it is. And so you bringing this to light, I think, really is incredible. It's a great tool and resource for someone out there that is that may be struggling with that within their own self. Did you have self-esteem issues, problems?
Yeah, especially like when I started showing symptoms of it my freshman year in high school, and I didn't get diagnosed till I was 21, that's a pretty pivotal time in your life not to know what's wrong with you. And for you to be going around telling people like, I think I might go to jail because I might have murdered somebody accidentally. Like how is that going to be received by your peers? Like they'll be like, well, did you hit somebody? Well, no. Okay. Well, why would you think that? So it's you're misunderstood a lot. And especially in Christian circles, it's like, that's just ridiculous. Just give it to God. But if your brain is wired in a way that you can't filter out the irrational thoughts, it's hard to fully give it to God.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm always big on, like, how do you take every thought captive?
Right.
Like I would love to be able to do that, because when you have OCD, it's the other way around. The thought takes you captive. Yeah. I don't think that's the way God designed it, but that's the effect that the broken world has had on human beings.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
So what would maybe final thoughts, what would you like to encourage someone out there that is struggling with this? What are some encouraging words you can give them, or some steps that they can take to help them in this process?
I think the road to recovery starts with identifying the problem. And I think just educating yourself on going through, like, do I have these symptoms? Is this what I'm displaying? Getting a diagnosis from a medical doctor, and then following the treatment that's going to be best for you. Obviously continue to pray about it.
Sure.
Continue to invite God into it. But really, like, what I would tell my kids, and because I know this is a genetic disorder, and so I'm always watching my kids like a hawk. A lot of times you can tell kids with tics. They'll have to have a certain tic, and if they don't do it, then they're really anxious. So I'm always keeping an eye on those things. I would just say that it's, even though only 3% of the world has it, I mean, that's still like 200 plus million people.
Right.
I want to tell people who have it that you're not crazy.
Yeah, that's
like,
good.
I know that these things sound crazy on the surface, but you're not crazy. And at the same time, God can take whatever is wrong and he could turn it for your good. God has used me in so many different relationships and in so many different ministries. Would I be the same person if I didn't have this thorn in my side? Maybe not. Like, God can use that.
Agreed. Scripture says that all things work together for good for those who love and serve him. And that's not just the good things. That's not just the bad, but that's truly everything that he allows us to walk through, allows us to have or go through. And so, you're a prime example of that. If I didn't know that about you,
It's not something I walk around telling everybody.
Sure. But you sharing this and having the ability, just the openness to be transparent. And I think that's what we're called to be as Christians, is transparent. Obviously, not everything that happens to us needs to be transparent. But there are times that we can share and really encourage and allow the people to know that they're not alone.
Exactly.
I think that's the biggest thing.
If I had found any kind of podcast or anything that I could listen to when I was really in the thick of this, just to know that somebody else is experiencing what I'm experiencing, and to know that you can come out of it, and to know that you can function, you could have a really great life, even though you have this diagnosis. I think that's what would have been great for me, is because I felt so alone, not knowing anybody else that had this. And then when you try to explain to somebody, they're like, that sounds crazy. Wow. So I want to shed a light on it. And especially now that I know that there's youth that are experiencing these things, even within our church, I'm like, you know what? You're not crazy. You're not abnormal. And you can still live a very fruitful life, even with this diagnosis, and God can work it together for your good.
That's great.
So I think that's the message, is don't be scared.
Yeah.
Don't be scared of the way that you're wired.
That's good. That's really good. Last thing, from a parent standpoint, when you were walking through this at a younger age, I'm sure they got frustrated with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would you share with a parent that maybe sees some tendencies in their child's life? How do you love them? How do you address it? But also, as you were saying with your husband, denying it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think it's about having just conversations. Like, if my child comes to me and I'm seeing my daughter put on an empty packet or empty container of eyeshadow every morning, I'll be like, okay, what is this about? And not cast judgment on it too quickly. Just be like, okay, something is driving this behavior. What is it? So I just say, like, be curious about it, ask questions, and then you don't immediately, you don't have to try to fix it.
Yeah, that's
You don't
good.
have to tell them like, well, doing this is not going to result in this, because deep down they do know that. So like not being dismissive of it, but just having a conversation and listening, and then helping them find the support that they need.
That's great. Just truly being intentional. Being intentional every day, especially with your children or your spouse or someone that you love that you suspect or that has been diagnosed with it, and meeting them where they're at.
Yeah.
You know, that's really great.
Yeah, I'd say that for all mental health disorders, because I have friends that have been diagnosed, with lots of different things, and it's just understanding, and they are uniquely wired, and sometimes we are uniquely wired in ways that God can do brilliant things with us. So yeah, just don't be ashamed of who you are. And
Well, let me just say that you do a phenomenal job.
Thanks.
You truly are a light. I love when you get on stage. Your voice, God has given you an incredible voice, as well as a speaking voice here in Above the Tree Line, and God is using you in a powerful way. So
thank you, Jack.
Thank you for everything
yeah,
you do.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Would you like to close out the episode addressing your camera, since you're the interviewer?
Sure. Thank you so much for joining us again at Above the Tree Line. Don't forget to subscribe and be a part of the community of Above the Tree Line, and hope to see you next time.